You ever have that gut feeling? Something deep inside you just doesn't add up? Like there's a secret right under your nose but no one's willing to talk about it? That's exactly where I found myself not long ago. My mom, someone I've known my entire life, looked me straight in the eye and said something so unbelievable, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my own family. She claimed, without a single hint of hesitation or doubt, that she'd never met my wife. Can you imagine? The woman I love, who's been by my side for years, suddenly erased from my mom's memory, or maybe something worse. And believe me, I was stunned, confused, and desperate to understand what was really going on. If you're watching this, you probably want to know why my mom would say something so shocking, something so personal. You want answers, like I did. What was she hiding? Was she protecting me, hiding a painful truth, or was there something sinister underneath? Well, here's the thing, I didn't just accept her words and move on. No, I went digging. I looked for proof. And what I found? A photo. A photo of my mom and my wife together from years ago. A photo that made no sense and turned everything I thought I knew upside down. You're about to join me on this journey right from the start, where the lines between love, trust, and mystery blur in ways I never expected. So, before you scroll away or jump to the next video, I want you to hold on tight. Because this story isn't just about family secrets or strange coincidences, it's about the kind of betrayal and confusion that cuts right to your core. I'm going to take you through every moment, the conversations that felt like riddles, the small clues that started stacking up, and the overwhelming feeling that I was missing something huge. You're going to hear from me, feel what I felt, and piece together the puzzle alongside me. And trust me, by the time this video ends, you're going to have answers. Answers that will make you question what you think you know about the people closest to you. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine sitting across from your mom at the kitchen table, coffee steaming between you, and she tells you with complete certainty that she's never met your wife. It's as if your wife doesn't exist in her world. You blink, you ask questions, but she just shakes her head. Never met her, she says. But how could that be? My wife has been a huge part of my life. At family dinners, holidays, birthdays, even everyday moments that are supposed to build memories. Yet my mom's words cut through all of that like a knife, leaving me grasping for any explanation that could make sense. I remember the exact moment I decided I couldn't just sit there and accept this. I grabbed my phone, my laptop, anything I could get my hands on, and I started digging through old photos, messages, anything that could prove my mom was wrong, or maybe prove something even stranger. And that's when I stumbled upon the photo. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it was from someone else or a doctored image. But no, there they were, my mom and my wife standing side by side, smiling in a picture that looked like it was taken years before my wife ever entered my life. The kind of photo you find tucked in an old album or stuck behind a frame, the kind you wouldn't expect to see, especially not with those two people in it. Now, you might be wondering, why would my mom deny ever meeting my wife if there's proof they were together? What was the reason behind this strange denial? Was it fear? Shame? Or something darker? And what did this photo mean for me, for my marriage, and for the family I thought I knew? These are the questions I wrestled with every single day, and they're the questions I want you to ask yourself as you watch this video unfold. Because every family has secrets. Some are harmless, but others can unravel everything you believe in. Here's the deal, I'm not here to just tell you what happened. I want you to feel it, to experience the confusion, the frustration, and the determination that drove me to uncover the truth. When someone you love turns away from a shared past like it never existed, it's not just strange, it's deeply unsettling. And if you've ever felt that in your own family, you know the kind of pain I'm talking about, the kind that makes you question everything, including your own memories. But this story isn't just about my mom and my wife. It's about trust, betrayal, and the lengths people go to protect or hide the truth. It's about how fragile relationships really are when shadows from the past start creeping in. It's about how sometimes the people who should know you best suddenly become strangers. And through it all, it's about me trying to hold on to what I believe is real, my love for my wife and my hope that my mom's denial isn't the end of the story. So, if you've ever had a mystery in your family, if you've ever caught a glimpse of something that just didn't sit right, or if you just love stories that twist and turn with every new revelation, you're in the right place. Stay with me because the next part is where things get even more intense. I'm going to show you the photo, reveal the conversations that followed, and take you through the roller coaster of emotions that changed everything for me. You'll see how a simple picture can become the key to a hidden past, a past no one wanted me to know about. And if you're worried about spoilers, don't be. This isn't your typical family drama. There are moments where reality shifts and trust fractures, where I question everything and everyone around me. And just when you think you've figured it out, another piece of the puzzle throws everything back into doubt. That's why I need you to watch closely, think deeply, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because this story isn't just mine, it's about the mysteries hidden in families everywhere. The moment I found that photo, everything shifted in my world, but before I could make sense of it, I had to rewind, go back to the weeks leading up to that discovery, to understand how I even got tangled in this web of confusion and secrets. You see, life hadn't been exactly simple. Between work stress, juggling family events, and trying to maintain a marriage that felt perfect on the surface but sometimes cracked at the edges, I had noticed some things lately that didn't quite add up. Little moments where my wife's phone would go dark for hours, or my mom would suddenly change the subject whenever my wife was mentioned. At first, I chalked it up to the usual family quirks. Everyone has their private spaces and moments, but with hindsight, I realized those were the subtle signs warning me that something was off. Maybe you've experienced that feeling too, the nagging sense that something just isn't right even when you can't put your finger on it. Leading up to the discovery, I was caught up in what I thought were routine family dinners and weekend visits, but beneath the surface there was tension. My mom, who had always been warm and welcoming, seemed distant, distracted. She avoided eye contact when I brought up any plans involving my wife, and on one occasion, I overheard a phone call where her voice was hushed, almost fearful. I wanted to ask her directly what was going on, but part of me hesitated, because sometimes when you sense a secret lurking in the shadows, you're scared of what you might find if you pull on that thread. Meanwhile, my wife seemed increasingly guarded about her past. She never talked much about her family or where she grew up, and whenever I asked, she'd brush it off with a smile and change the subject. That wasn't like her, and it planted more seeds of doubt in my mind. If you've ever been in a relationship where something felt hidden, you know how unsettling it can be to live with unanswered questions every day. It wasn't just the tension between my mom and wife that bothered me. There were other subtle clues that, at the time, seemed unrelated but now make me think they were all connected pieces of the puzzle. For example, one afternoon while tidying up the basement, I found an old box filled with photo albums and letters. Some were mine from childhood, others were from my mom's younger days. As I flipped through the dusty pages, one photo slipped out and landed face up on the floor, the one that started it all. The photo wasn't just of my mom and my wife standing side by side. It was a candid moment at what looked like a family gathering or a summer picnic, smiling and relaxed. Yet there was no mention of this event in any stories I'd heard, no hint that these two had ever crossed paths. The fact that my mom now insisted she'd never met my wife made that photo feel like a blatant lie, or a carefully hidden truth. I started to wonder if I was missing something crucial about my wife's past. Could she have been involved in something she never told me? Was my mom hiding something to protect me, or was there bad blood between them? I even questioned my own memory. Was I sure about the timeline? Had my wife and mom really been in that photo together years ago, or was this some cruel mistake? This is where the mystery deepened, where I realized I needed to dig deeper, not just for myself but for everyone involved. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that secrets like these don't just disappear, they have a way of coming out in strange, unexpected ways, often when you least expect them. As I probed further, trying to piece together how my mom and wife could be connected, I began to notice other people around us who seemed to play a role in this tangled story. There was my wife's best friend, someone I'd known for years but never really questioned. She always seemed just a little too protective of my wife, and sometimes her reactions when I asked about the past were oddly nervous. Then there was an old family friend of my mom's who had suddenly stopped returning calls, someone who had been close to us growing up but now avoided any mention of my wife altogether. These little details started stacking up in my mind like a list of suspects in a mystery, each with motives I couldn't yet understand. Was someone trying to keep me from knowing the truth? Or worse, was someone hiding something from my wife? Something that involved my mom in ways I couldn't yet see? I'll admit, at times I felt overwhelmed by all the questions and the uncertainty. It's hard when the people you love start acting like strangers, when trust feels fragile, and every conversation seems like a game of carefully chosen words and hidden meanings. Maybe you've been there too, wondering if the version of your family story you grew up with is incomplete or worse, a fabrication. That's the weight I was carrying when I decided to confront both my mom and my wife, to try and break through the walls they'd both built around this mystery. But instead of clear answers, I was met with hesitation, confusion, and sometimes outright denial. It was as if the photo I found was a secret too dangerous to admit, something that could unravel everything if brought to light. Still, I couldn't back down. I knew the truth was out there, buried beneath layers of silence and avoidance. And as I continued to connect the dots, I discovered that this story was bigger than just a forgotten photo or a denied meeting. It involved old family wounds, complicated histories, and perhaps even betrayals none of us were ready to face. Each new piece of information raised more questions than answers, and every person I spoke with seemed to have their own version of events, some contradicting others, some vague, and some deliberately misleading. This wasn't just about a photo anymore, it was about unearthing the hidden history of my family and the mysterious past of the woman I married. And just when I thought I was getting closer to the truth, something unexpected happened that threw everything into chaos. Something that made me question not only the people around me but my own judgment. A late-night message from an unknown number, a whispered conversation caught out of earshot, and a discovery that pointed to secrets not just from the past, but one still alive and dangerous today. This mystery was no longer just about who had met whom. It was about trust, deception, and the fragile line between love and betrayal. It was about how well you really know the people closest to you, and what happens when those foundations start to crumble. Just when I thought I was gaining ground, that the pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fit together, reality hit me like a cold wave. One evening, as I sat down to go over everything again, the photos, the texts, the conversations, I noticed something was missing. The original photo I found, the one that had flipped my world upside down, it was gone. Not misplaced, not accidentally deleted, completely vanished from my phone, from every digital backup I had. I scoured every folder, checked every cloud account, even searched through my physical photo albums just in case, but it was nowhere to be found. At first, I thought maybe I was losing my mind or that I had somehow deleted it by mistake. But then the nagging feeling settled in, the one that whispers, someone doesn't want you to see this. And if you've ever chased after a secret that people want buried, you know exactly what that paranoia feels like. The creeping suspicion that there's more at stake here than you realize. That wasn't the only warning sign. Around the same time, I started getting messages, cryptic, vague, but unmistakably clear in their intent. Stop digging, one said. Another came through a few days later, some truths are better left alone. No name, no explanation, just chilling words that made my heart race and my head spin. I couldn't tell if these warnings were from someone trying to protect me or from someone who wanted to keep the past locked away forever. I debated ignoring them, brushing them off as scare tactics, but as the days went on, I felt a growing sense of danger, a pressure that weighed on me and made every phone buzz or knock at the door seem like a threat. I know some of you have been through this kind of intimidation, when the pursuit of truth suddenly feels like stepping into a trap, when uncovering secrets starts to come at a real cost. And then there was the one person I never expected to question, the person I thought was an ally. An old family friend who had always been a pillar of support for me and my family suddenly became elusive, dodging my calls and avoiding any talk about my wife or that photo. When I finally caught up with them, their reaction was strange, defensive, almost scared, and they hinted at a past event nobody had talked about, something involving my mom and my wife years ago that should never be brought up again. They refused to explain, but their unease was a red flag I couldn't ignore. It made me realize this mystery wasn't just about a forgotten meeting or a mistaken photo, it was about a secret buried deep, a hidden betrayal that someone was desperate to keep hidden. The more I pushed, the more I felt like I was being pulled into a story that had dark corners I wasn't ready to face. And what was that secret event? What had happened between my mom and my wife that was so serious it made people fall silent? From what I gathered in hushed conversations and guarded hints, it wasn't just a casual acquaintance or a friendly moment captured on film. It was something that had fractured relationships, changed lives, and left scars that hadn't healed. Maybe it was a betrayal or a decision made in desperation. Maybe it was an event that explained why my mom would erase my wife from her memories today, why she'd deny ever meeting her despite evidence to the contrary. But without concrete answers, it was just another piece of a puzzle with missing edges, and every attempt to fill in those blanks seemed to raise more questions than it answered. At the same time, I started noticing strange behaviors from people close to me. Some offered help but seemed to hold back information, others gave advice that felt like warnings to drop the whole thing. Even my wife, who I thought would want to face this head-on with me, became more distant, as if there were walls between us that I couldn't climb. And that made me wonder, was she hiding something? Was she protecting me from a painful truth, or was she caught in the middle of a complicated web she couldn't escape? The doubt was unbearable, but it fueled my determination to keep going, even when every step forward felt like walking deeper into a fog. As this all unfolded, I realized one thing for sure: uncovering the truth wasn't going to be easy. There were forces at play that didn't want me to succeed, secrets layered like onion skins waiting to be peeled back slowly, and a history that was more complicated and darker than I could have imagined. And the biggest question of all, was I ready for the answers? Because sometimes when the past comes knocking, it doesn't just change your story, it changes who you are. And just when I thought I might finally get a break, when I believed I was close to uncovering the truth behind that vanished photo and the strange denial from my mom, something happened that stopped me cold. A phone call in the dead of night, a voice I recognized but couldn't place, warned me in no uncertain terms to let it go, that pushing further would only bring pain and danger. And then, the last piece of evidence I was holding on to, a letter I'd found hidden away with the photo albums, disappeared from my home without a trace. No sign of forced entry, no clue who could have taken it, just gone. It was like the past was fighting back, erasing itself piece by piece to keep me from the truth. So here I am, stuck between what I know, what I suspect, and the threats that tell me to stop. The photo that started this whole journey has vanished, the warnings keep coming, and the people I thought I could trust are turning into suspects. The question now is not just what happened years ago, but how far am I willing to go to uncover a truth that so many want buried? And even more chilling, what will happen if I don't stop? The answers are out there, but the risks are real, and the darkness surrounding this mystery is growing thicker by the day. Just as I was trying to process the late-night call and the disappearance of the letter, something unexpected happened that twisted this whole story into a far more tangled web. It wasn't just me who was being pulled into the shadows of this mystery anymore. Someone else close to me started receiving the same kind of chilling warnings, the same vague threats and unsettling signs that told us both to stop digging. It was my younger sister. She had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed out of the drama, but suddenly she called me, voice shaky and breathless, telling me she'd found a note slipped under her bedroom door. The message was simple but terrifyingly clear: stop asking questions or face the consequences. She hadn't mentioned the note to anyone else, but confiding in me made it impossible to ignore that whatever was happening was bigger and more dangerous than I'd imagined. The fact that my sister was now involved shifted everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a strange photo or family denial. It was about protection, fear, and someone, or maybe multiple people, going to great lengths to bury the truth. I thought back to all the odd interactions we'd both had with relatives and friends lately, the cold shoulders, the sudden silence, and the strange glances exchanged behind closed doors. Was it possible that some kind of alliance had formed against us? Who would want to keep this secret so badly that threats extended beyond me to my own family? And why? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the surface story, the one about my mom claiming she'd never met my wife, was just the tip of a much larger iceberg. There were layers beneath it, layers filled with fear, deception, and maybe even betrayal. To make matters more confusing, just when I was trying to put all these pieces together, another piece of evidence came to light, but instead of clearing things up, it threw everything I believed into chaos. I stumbled upon an old journal belonging to my wife, one I hadn't seen before, hidden in a drawer at her parents' house during a visit. In it were cryptic entries about a secret she'd kept locked away for years, references to a past that cannot be spoken of, and mentions of someone she feared, someone connected to my family. But the most shocking part was a mention of an event that directly contradicted everything my mom had said about never knowing her. According to the journal, not only had they met, but there was a moment of confrontation between them, a heated argument that left scars deeper than I ever imagined. Suddenly, the picture I found was no longer just proof of a meeting, it was a clue to a battle fought behind closed doors, the fallout of which might explain my mom's refusal to acknowledge my wife's existence. At this point, I found myself questioning everything and everyone around me. Was my wife hiding something that could destroy our relationship? Was my mom protecting herself, or was she hiding something darker that threatened us all? And what about the people who had suddenly gone silent? The family, friends, the allies I once trusted. Were they caught in the middle or actively working to keep us in the dark? Every new discovery brought with it more uncertainty and suspicion. I felt trapped in a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit, where every answer led to more questions, and every ally seemed to have their own agenda. The tension grew heavier when my sister confided that she had spotted a strange figure watching her near our home, someone she didn't recognize but who disappeared whenever she tried to approach. The feeling of being watched, followed, or even threatened wasn't just in my head, it was real and it was escalating. I started wondering if we were dealing with more than just family secrets. Was there a force, a person, or a group intent on keeping this past buried at all costs? Were we pawns in a dangerous game that had been played long before any of us were born? The more I dug, the more I realized that the stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined. This was no longer just about uncovering a forgotten photo or a denied meeting, it was about survival, trust, and navigating a maze of lies that threatened to destroy everything I cared about. And just when I thought the walls were closing in, a new piece of information arrived. A phone call from an unknown number, a voice distorted but unmistakably familiar, warning me again, this time with a chilling promise: stop now or those you love will pay the price. It was clear that the game was escalating, the players growing bolder, and the line between friend and foe blurring dangerously. With my family caught in the crossfire, the truth felt further away than ever, buried beneath layers of fear, silence, and deception. And the question I couldn't shake was simple but terrifying: who could I really trust? As the night deepened and the threats grew louder, I knew one thing for sure: the journey to uncover the truth was only just beginning, and it would demand everything I had. But with so many secrets, so many players hiding in the shadows, one thing was certain: the story I thought I knew was about to change forever, and nothing would ever be the same again. The late hours of that night felt heavier than any I'd ever experienced, like the air itself was pressing down on me, suffocating and thick with unseen eyes watching from every shadow. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer just a bystander in this strange mystery, I was the target. It started small at first: a flicker of movement outside my window, a car idling too long on my street, footsteps that stopped whenever I glanced over my shoulder. But then it escalated in ways I hadn't been prepared for. One evening, returning home after a late meeting, I noticed the usual lights in the house were out. That was odd. Even stranger was the silence, the absence of the small sounds I'd always associated with comfort: my wife's laughter, the rustling of pages as my sister read in her room, the familiar creak of the floorboards. I called out, but no answer came. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. And then I saw it: my sister's bedroom door wide open, her bed untouched, her things still there, but she was gone. Panic washed over me like a tidal wave, cold and paralyzing. I searched every corner of the house, my voice cracking as I called her name into the emptiness. Was this connected to the threats? Was someone trying to send a message by taking her? The possibility that my family was now being pulled deeper into this darkness hit me with crushing weight. It wasn't just about hidden photos or whispered secrets anymore. It was about safety, survival, and the terrifying reality that the people I loved were being used as pawns in a game I barely understood. My mind raced, grappling with fear, guilt, and a desperate need to protect those closest to me. I replayed every conversation, every warning, every strange glance, trying to find the moment where everything had gone wrong. Sleep became impossible, my dreams invaded by shadows and voices, and every noise outside my window felt like a threat. I couldn't trust anyone, not the family friends who suddenly grew distant, not the allies who once seemed dependable, and most painfully, not even my own instincts that had led me deeper into this maze of deception. The paranoia crept in slowly but relentlessly, turning everyday moments into sources of anxiety. Was that stranger at the grocery store watching me? Were the messages on my phone truly anonymous, or was someone close enough to know my every move? The line between reality and fear blurred, but the danger felt all too real. I knew I had to act, but every step forward seemed to come with a cost. Every question asked pulled me deeper into the unknown. Then came the most chilling moment. An envelope slipped under my door with no return address, no name, just a single page typed with a message that shook me to my core: stop now or you'll lose everything. It wasn't a threat anymore, it was a promise. The words echoed in my mind, making every shadow a potential danger, every silence a warning. I felt trapped between the past I was desperate to uncover and a future I feared might be lost. The stakes were no longer just about hidden family secrets. They were about survival, about the very real possibility that digging too deep could cost me the people I loved most. And in that moment, the truth felt both desperately close and terrifyingly out of reach, like a light flickering at the edge of a dark tunnel, promising answers but warning of danger. The mystery that started with a single photo had transformed into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. And with my sister missing, the threats escalating, and trust slipping through my fingers, I realized I was no longer just looking for answers. I was fighting for my family's survival. But who was behind it all? What was the secret so powerful it had people silenced and lives endangered? And most haunting of all, was I ready to face the truth, no matter how dark it might be? As the night deepened and silence filled the empty rooms of my home, I knew one thing for sure: this story was far from over, and the next move could change everything. Just when I thought the pieces of this puzzle were finally settling into place, when every lead and shadow seemed to point toward a grim but understandable truth, the ground shifted beneath me in a way I never saw coming. It wasn't until a chance conversation, one I almost ignored, that everything flipped upside down, forcing me to question every assumption I'd made from the start. It happened late one night in the quiet of my living room, when an old family friend I had long trusted, someone I'd confided in through the worst of it all, dropped a bombshell that shattered everything I thought I knew. They leaned in close, voice barely above a whisper, and said something that echoed in my mind long after the words left their lips. You've been looking in the wrong place this whole time. It's not your mom or your wife you should be questioning, it's yourself. At first I didn't understand. How could I be the missing link in this mystery? How could my own memories, my own sense of what was real, be the thing twisted beyond recognition? But as they spoke, a hidden layer of the story began to reveal itself, one so unexpected that it made me rethink every photo, every denial, every secret message. The photo of my mom and my wife together? It wasn't just a snapshot from the past, it was a staged moment, a carefully constructed lie meant to manipulate, to create doubt and confusion. And the denials from my mom? They weren't about hiding a meeting but about protecting me from a truth so unsettling it threatened to unravel everything about who I thought I was. The warnings, the threats, the disappearances, they all suddenly took on a new meaning, as if someone had orchestrated the entire drama to keep me off balance, to make me question what was real and what was illusion. But the real twist was the revelation about me, about memories I didn't know were false, a past I didn't fully remember. The family friend hinted at events long buried, things I'd blocked out or convinced myself were something else entirely. There were hints that I might have been involved in incidents, maybe even betrayals, that I had no conscious recollection of, and that those hidden moments were the real reason behind the secrecy and fear. Suddenly, the person at the center of this storm wasn't just the mother who denied knowing my wife or the wife who kept parts of her past locked away, it was me. My own mind, my own history might be the key to unlocking the truth, but also the source of the deepest mystery. This revelation twisted the knife further when the person I thought was my closest ally, the one who had helped me piece together the story, started behaving strangely, pulling away, avoiding questions and showing signs of guilt I couldn't explain. Were they protecting me or were they hiding something bigger? Was the story I had been chasing a smoke screen for something darker, something personal? The more I tried to hold on to what I believed, the more it slipped through my fingers, leaving me suspended in a maze of doubt and suspicion. And then, as if the universe wanted to remind me how fragile trust really is, an unexpected figure stepped into the spotlight. Someone from my wife's past, someone I'd never met but who claimed to hold the missing pieces to the puzzle. Their story contradicted everything I'd heard, painting a picture of manipulation, deception, and secrets kept in plain sight. This new person wasn't just a stranger. They had a hidden agenda, a stake in the outcome that made me question their every word. Were they telling the truth, or were they another player in this dangerous game trying to steer me away from the real answers? All at once, the mystery exploded from a simple family dispute into a tangled web of fractured memories, hidden motives, and unexpected players. The truth I sought seemed farther away than ever, obscured by lies, half-truths, and the ever-present question of who I could really trust. What started as a search for a photo and a denied meeting had transformed into a journey through my own mind, my own history, and a web of secrets so complex it left me wondering if I'd ever find solid ground again. As the pieces fell apart and the story rewrote itself before my eyes, I realized one chilling thing. Sometimes the darkest mysteries aren't about the people you think, they're about the parts of yourself you don't want to face. And in this story, the line between victim and perpetrator, between truth and illusion, was thinner than I ever imagined. I found myself standing at a crossroads that no one should ever have to face, the kind of impossible choice that twists your insides and leaves you questioning not just what's right but who you even are. After the shocking revelations, after the new players entered this tangled game of secrets and lies, I knew I had to confront someone who had been by my side through it all, the one person whose involvement could either shatter everything or finally bring some clarity. Was my wife. The person I trusted most suddenly became the center of my suspicion, the person I needed answers from but feared would break apart my world completely. I wrestled with every thought as I prepared for that conversation, because I knew it wouldn't just be about facts, it would be about trust, betrayal, and the fragile thread holding our relationship together. The night I finally confronted her was one I won't forget. There was no room for avoidance anymore. The weight of unanswered questions and half-truths hung between us like a storm ready to break. As I looked into her eyes, I saw the same fear and pain reflected back at me, but also something deeper, a guarded secret she was desperate to protect. I asked the questions that had been eating at me for weeks, questions about the photo, about the denials, about the past she'd kept hidden and the strange messages we'd both received warning us to stop digging. Her silence was deafening at first and then, slowly, the cracks started to show. She confessed there were things she hadn't told me, things that might explain the lies, the fears, the broken trust. But even then, her words were cautious, measured. She warned me that some truths could destroy us, that digging deeper might bring danger not just to me but to everyone I loved. It was a moment filled with heartbreak and raw emotion, and I realized that this was no longer just about uncovering the past, it was about deciding whether I was willing to risk everything for the truth. Not long after that painful conversation, I received an ultimatum that crushed what little peace I had left. An anonymous message, clear and cold, spelled out the stakes in black and white. Stop the investigation or face consequences that would change my life forever. It wasn't a vague threat anymore. It was a direct challenge that forced me to weigh my safety against the desperate need to uncover what had been hidden for so long. Could I protect my family if I walked away from this? Or was silence the real danger, a slow poison that would eat away at the very foundations of my life? The question haunted me day and night, turning every decision into a gamble, every moment into a battle between fear and courage. I was trapped in a nightmare where every choice had a price, and the only certainty was that nothing would ever be the same again. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt torn between the man I wanted to be, the husband, the brother, the son who keeps his family safe, and the relentless seeker of truth who refused to back down. The weight of suspicion and betrayal settled heavily on my shoulders, and the loneliness grew, even when surrounded by the people I cared about most. Doubt seeped into every corner of my mind. Had I pushed too hard? Was I the cause of this fracture? Could love survive when trust was shattered by secrets and fear? And most painfully, I wondered if the truth I chased was worth the risk it demanded. The tension mounted with every passing day, as the lines between friend and foe blurred and the shadows around me grew darker. I was caught in a web woven by lies, half-truths, and fears too big to face alone. But despite the dangers, despite the threats and the emotional turmoil, a part of me couldn't stop. The mystery wasn't just a puzzle to solve, it was a battle for the future of my family, a fight to reclaim the trust and love that felt like slipping through my fingers. And as I stood at this crossroads, facing impossible choices and the harsh reality of what was at stake, I realized that sometimes the hardest decisions aren't about right or wrong, they're about survival, sacrifice, and the courage to face the unknown no matter the cost. The story I thought I was telling had changed completely. Now, every secret uncovered raised new fears, every truth revealed came with a price, and the question wasn't just who to trust, it was whether I could trust myself to make the right choice before it was too late. The deeper I dug, the more it became clear that this wasn't just some personal family drama spiraling out of control, it was a sprawling, calculated conspiracy that reached far beyond anything I had imagined. What started with a single photo and whispered denials morphed into a tangled network of secrets, lies, and betrayals that wrapped around not just me, but nearly everyone I thought I could count on. The shock hit hardest when I realized someone I trusted implicitly, the person I confided in the most, the one who had helped me piece together fragments of the truth, was actually working against me, feeding information back to the very forces trying to bury this story forever. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was dangerous, like a knife twisting in my back at the moment I least expected. It all unfolded rapidly. Late one night, after a frantic call from my sister, I rushed to her apartment only to find it trashed, papers scattered everywhere, drawers emptied, the unmistakable signs that someone had been searching for something. She was nowhere to be found. The panic that surged through me was unbearable, but what chilled me even more was the cold message waiting for me at her place. You're running out of time. Stop now or lose them all. That's when the scale hit me. The conspiracy wasn't just about hiding a photo or denying a connection between my mom and wife. It was about control, about silencing anyone who got too close to the truth. It was about power and the lengths some people would go to keep it. Every moment since felt like running through a minefield. Calls were tapped, messages intercepted, and allies vanished into thin air. The people I thought were on my side turned distant, guarded, or outright hostile. I learned that this network involved old family friends, business associates, even local officials who had a stake in keeping the past buried. The story was no longer just mine, it was bigger, messier, and more dangerous than I had the courage to face alone. The pressure was suffocating, the urgency relentless. With my sister missing and my wife's hidden past unraveling, the stakes couldn't have been higher. I was fighting against a shadowy force that had infiltrated every corner of my life, determined to make me disappear if I didn't fall in line. In a moment that still haunts me, the person I had trusted most confessed, not out of guilt but because the pressure became too much to bear. They revealed they'd been coerced, threatened, trapped in a web they couldn't escape, forced to choose between their own safety and loyalty to me. That betrayal stung like fire, but it also cracked open the door to deeper truths, secrets about money, manipulation, and a decades-old feud that had exploded into the chaos consuming my family today. It was a revelation that changed everything, forcing me to rethink who was friend, who was foe, and what sacrifices I was willing to make. The danger wasn't abstract anymore, it was real and immediate. Every shadow held a threat, every phone call could be the last, and every decision felt like a gamble with lives hanging in the balance. I knew I was closing in on the heart of the conspiracy, but I also knew the closer I got, the greater the risk, not just for me but for everyone I loved. The pressure built to a breaking point, the tension unbearable as I faced a final brutal choice. Keep pushing forward and risk losing everything, or walk away and let the lies win. There was no easy answer, no safe path, only the raw, painful reality of a story that refused to end quietly. This was no longer just about a photo or a forgotten meeting, it was a fight for truth, trust, and survival. And as I stood on the edge of the unknown, with the full weight of the conspiracy bearing down on me, I realized that the ending I wanted might never come. The real story, the one nobody wanted told, was still buried beneath the lies, waiting for someone brave enough to face it. The night I finally confronted the person pulling the strings was the night everything exploded, and nothing was ever the same again. I had tracked down the truth to a secluded location, a place tied to old family grudges and buried secrets, where shadows seemed to crawl along the walls like restless ghosts. The air was thick with tension, every step echoing like a countdown to something inevitable. When the door finally opened, it wasn't just a person who stood there, it was the embodiment of every lie, every betrayal, every whispered warning that had haunted me since the beginning. The person I had least suspected, whose smile had always felt warm but whose eyes now glinted with cold calculation, faced me with a calmness that made my blood run cold. This was the final battle, not just of words but of wills, of truth against deception, of a son fighting to reclaim his family from the depths of a conspiracy designed to destroy it. They laid it all bare in a voice dripping with both regret and menace. The photo, the denied meetings, the threats, they were all parts of a carefully woven narrative meant to protect a secret so explosive that revealing it would shatter everything we believed about our family and ourselves. The truth was darker than I could have imagined. A hidden betrayal years ago, one that involved a desperate decision to cover up a mistake that had cost someone's life. My mom and my wife's connection wasn't just accidental. It was tied to that event, a tangled knot of guilt, fear, and revenge. The conspiracy wasn't just about hiding the past, it was about controlling the future, about keeping me from exposing a truth that would unravel powerful alliances and destroy reputations. I realized that my sister's disappearance was part of the plan, a ruthless move to silence anyone who got too close. The weight of that truth crushed me, but beneath the shock burned a fierce determination, not just to survive but to fight back. The confrontation grew intense, voices raised, accusations flying in a torrent of emotion and raw pain. It was a psychological battle as much as anything physical, testing my resolve and shaking the foundation of everything I'd ever trusted. But amid the chaos, I saw the cracks, fissures of doubt and remorse in my adversary's facade that told me this was not just a villain, but a deeply flawed human caught in their own web of regret and fear. The tension mounted until, in a moment charged with desperation, I presented the final piece of evidence. The hidden journal entries, the messages, the corroborating details that no one could deny. The truth was laid bare, raw and undeniable, and for a heartbeat, the room was silent except for the sound of heavy breathing and pounding hearts. Then, just when I thought the storm had passed and the secrets would finally come to light, the ground shifted beneath me once more. A sudden phone buzzed with a new message, unexpected and chilling. "You're closer than you think, but this is far from over." The words hit me like a punch, a reminder that even as I uncovered the heart of the mystery, the real danger was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next move. The story I'd fought so hard to unravel wasn't finished, and the final twist was one I never saw coming. The person who had been orchestrating much of the deception was not the only one with secrets, and someone even closer to me had been watching, waiting, and manipulating events from behind the scenes all along. As I stood there, breathless and battered but unbroken, I realized that the fight for truth and survival was far from over. The layers of betrayal, love, and deception had only just begun to peel back, and the next chapter promised to be even darker and more unpredictable than anything I had faced before. But no matter the cost, I was ready to face it, because some truths, no matter how painful, are worth fighting for. In the quiet aftermath of everything that had happened, I found myself sitting alone in the dim light of my living room, the weight of the past months settling around me like a heavy fog. The whirlwind of revelations, betrayals, and threats had finally slowed, leaving a stillness that was both a relief and a reminder of what had been lost along the way. My sister was safe again, though the scars of her disappearance ran deep, and my wife and I were trying to piece together what remained of the trust between us, fragile but not broken. The tangled web of lies that had consumed my family was unraveling, exposing truths that some wanted buried but that I now held in my hands. It wasn't the neat resolution I had hoped for. The truth was messy, painful, and filled with shadows that even now refused to fully clear. Yet, in that complexity I found a strange kind of peace, a quiet acceptance that some mysteries don't have perfect endings, only new beginnings. I thought about my mom, about her denial, about the pain she carried that had kept her from embracing my wife as family. Understanding that pain didn't erase the hurt, but it helped me forgive, helped me see her not as an antagonist but as a flawed human caught in her own battle with regret and fear. The photo that started it all became more than just evidence. It was a symbol of the layers beneath appearances, the hidden stories that shape our lives in ways we can't always see. And while the conspiracy had pulled me into a dangerous game, it also revealed the strength I didn't know I had, the ability to face the darkest parts of my past and still move forward, even when the path was uncertain and the future unknown. But even as I write this, as the dust settles and the immediate dangers fade, I can't shake the feeling that the story isn't truly over. The final message I received in that tense confrontation, "You're closer than you think, but this is far from over," still echoes in my mind like a warning and a promise. There are questions left unanswered, shadows that haven't fully lifted, and perhaps other players watching from the edges, waiting for the right moment to step back into the light. Maybe some secrets are meant to be carried, not fully revealed, or maybe the truth is a moving target that changes with every new discovery. Whatever lies ahead, I know now that the search for truth is rarely clean or easy, and sometimes the hardest part is living with what you find and what you never will. For those watching this journey unfold, I want you to remember that behind every family secret, every denial, and every hidden photo, there are real people with fears, regrets, and hopes not unlike your own. Sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't just about what happened, but about how we choose to move forward despite the pain and uncertainty. My story may have found a fragile piece, but the questions it raised will stay with me, and maybe with you too, long after the screen goes dark. Because in the end, the truth is never just a story told. It's a mirror held up to ourselves, reflecting the light and shadow that live inside us all. And with that, the chapter closes, but the echoes remain.